Okay, as people are filing in, I would just like to, remind everyone to keep your phones on silent so we don't disrupt any more of the amazing speeches that we have tonight. And with that, I would like to thank Mr. Kleckner for giving that amazing speech. It was really inspirational for everyone sitting backstage, and I'm sure for all of you as well, and it's just great and very astounding. So, up next, I am pleased to welcome to the stage a girl who I'm very privileged to call one of my closest friends today. Her name is Jayasree Peri. So, give it up for Jayasree, y'all.
Hey guys. Okay. That's my brother. Okay, so let me tell you a story. There is a 5-year-old boy. He is mischievous yet adorable, just like any other child his age. So one day, the little boy and his family were visiting a friend's place. There, all the children were playing, including the little boy, and so the mom decided to go and get something from the kitchen. Right at that moment, though, the doorbell rang, and so everybody got distracted in seeing who was at the door. But 5 minutes later, when the mom came back, she realized that the little boy was missing. Everybody searched everywhere around the house, hoping that he was just playing a little game of hide and seek. But they were not able to find him even after an hour. Panicked, they went and searched the whole neighborhood, yet still they could not find the little boy. After a futile hour, they finally called 911, and soon the cops joined the family in their frantic search. After what seemed like eternity, the family finally received a call from the cops saying that there was a little boy at the fire department who was just brought in by a lady. He had no shoes or jacket on, and it was a really chilly day that day. The family rushed to the fire department, hoping that that little boy was their child. And luckily for them, it was. Next slide. Okay, cool. So now you must be thinking, why am I telling you the story in the first place? Well, the little boy in the story and that little boy is my brother, Sriram. Sriram is now 14 years old and he is on the autism spectrum. But you must be thinking, why didn't he just go and tell somebody that he was lost? Well, due to his autism, he is nonverbal and isn't able to express his needs or his emotions. His story is one of many. Autism is not the same for any two individuals, and even though it might describe a person, it does not define him or her. Hi, my name is Jayasree Peri, and I'm a junior here at Ravine Valley High School. I'm here today to speak not only about autism itself, but also, and more so, about autism acceptance. But before I begin, let me first talk about what autism is in the first place. So, autism spectrum disorder is a serious developmental disorder that impairs an individual's ability to interact or communicate with others. So, this might come as a surprise to you, but autism is actually a rising epidemic. Today, 1 in 59 children are diagnosed with autism, and each day over 100 diagnoses are diagnosed. And although we don't know why, boys are actually 5 times more likely to be diagnosed than girls are. And basically, each day the rate of diagnosis is merely increasing. So imagine, in the future, what's it going to be? Like, where will we be? What will happen? So as I said before, can we go back? So as I said before, autism is not the same for any two individuals. So there's a spectrum that ranges from low to high. The low end of the spectrum usually consists of people who are high functioning. On the high end of the spectrum, there are those with severe autism, for example, my brother. So people on the low end of the spectrum usually have the ability to communicate. The thing about them is that they can't converse well or maybe understand other people's emotions. On the other hand, there are those with severe autism on the higher end of the spectrum. People on this end of the spectrum usually are nonverbal and can't communicate or have a hard time doing so. So, next slide. Okay, so although there are differences in every single individual with autism, there are certain core symptoms that resonate with almost all of them. So there are 4 main categories of symptoms: developmental, cognitive, psychological, and behavioral. So developmental symptoms usually include things like learning disability, delayed or no speech, or even the regression in development. Psychologically, an individual with autism would likely have a hard time communicating or understanding other people's emotions. Cognitive symptoms usually encompass things like limited interest or paying attention to things, or just problems paying attention in general. But the main category that I want to focus on today is behavioral, on account of autism acceptance. So behavioral symptoms encompass things like stimming, tantrums, aggression, or even self-injury. So stimming is defined as self-stimulatory behavior. Basically, it's an individual's desire to satisfy his or her sensory needs. So let's do a little survey, because one fun fact is that stimming is actually common even amongst neurotypical people. So raise your hands if you bite your nails, twirl your hair, tap your foot, or bounce your leg while sitting down. Okay, so that's like a lot of you. So basically, these are actually all examples of stimming. But don't feel bad if you do any of these, which I think most of you do. Because in our society, there's a stigma that stimming is bad or negative or something like that. But on the contrary, it's actually really good for your health because it helps relieve physical and emotional stress. Now, in people with autism, stimming usually includes things like rocking back and forth, vocalizing, tapping objects against other objects, or basically any other extremely repetitive behavior. So in theory, stimming is same for both people with autism and neurotypical people. The main difference is that neurotypical people have the ability to consciously control their stimming. They can stop themselves from doing it. On the other hand, people with autism aren't able to do that. Their body essentially forces them to stim, so they can't say when or when not they stim. For some reason, however, in our society, individuals with autism are seen as societal anomalies, and they're bullied. But why? Why is it necessary that we view them in a different way? Why can't we treat them normally and give them the respect that they deserve? Now, there is a word that I think should be used a lot more and known a lot more than it is today. So raise your hand if you know what the word ableism means. Okay, so that's about half of you. Okay, well, next slide. For those of you that don't know, ableism is defined as discrimination or social prejudice against people with disabilities. Basically, it's like a type of discrimination that favors able-bodied people, hence the name. Now, ableism is actually one of the more common forms of the so-called isms, racism, sexism, colorism, etc. One of the most common instances of ableism is when people use derogatory words such as retarded or autistic. For example, someone might say, oh, that test was so retarded, when what they really mean is that the test was hard or weird or something of that sort. The person could have said the exact same statement in a totally different way without using such hurtful words. Many people who use these derogatory words kind of use the excuse that, oh, it's just a joke or it's not that big of a deal. But it is a big deal, and it's not a joke. Now, the same excuses are used by people who actually imitate the behaviors of those with autism. For example, something that happens a lot is the mimicking of the stimming behaviors, like the flapping of the hands or the rocking of the body. Now, this is also ableism, because essentially, an able-bodied person is intentionally doing and in turn making fun of something that a person with autism can't help but do. Now, raise your hand if you've ever seen or heard any ableist action or language. Okay, so that's a lot of you. So basically what we can take from this is that, a lot of you have heard or seen ableism, but you just weren't able to call it out or put a name to it. But see, in order to further ourselves as a society and actually call it out, we need to first know its name. We need to be able to say that's ableism and we need to stop that. Now, we all know, next slide. So we all know that bullying is a huge problem, but it's even worse for those with autism. The numbers are actually quite shocking. Out of all students who are bullied, 63% of them are on the autism spectrum. Now, reinforcing ableist values is equally as detrimental, even if it's not directed towards anybody. A lot of times what happens is that people use derogatory words for absolutely no reason. A lot of things that, for example, something I see a lot happen is that, especially on social media, people just make fun of their friends using derogatory words. Now, making fun of your friends is a very common thing, and a lot of people do it. But in these situations, what's not okay is that people use derogatory words to do so. And even though, they may think that, hey, it's okay that I'm doing this because I'm not saying it directly to a person with autism. But it's not. It's not in any way okay. Because basically what that person is saying is that they do not give respect to the person with autism, that they don't respect their disability. Now, one more reason why an individual with autism might be seen as quote-unquote weird is because of their tantrums, aggression, or self-injurious behaviors. Almost always, these behaviors all are because of sensory issues, whether it is internal or external. And they're helpless. They don't want to show such behaviors, but their body essentially forces them to do so. And as I said before, they can't stop themselves from doing it. That's my brother. So in these situations, the best thing to do is just, to walk away, or just try not to make a big deal out of it, because if you stand there and attract a crowd, it's just going to make things worse for both the individual and the caregiver. So, a tantrum or display of aggression or self-injury is not a puppet show. So don't just stand there and attract a crowd. If you don't know how to help, then just walk away, because that's going to be the biggest help for the person. Okay, and some people also believe that, people with autism don't understand what the derogatory words are being used against them. But here's the thing, they do, and it really hurts their feelings, In order to understand what they're going through, we must first put ourselves in their shoes. And we must not only put ourselves in their shoes, but we must also walk a mile in their shoes. Have you ever thought about, how do they feel? What's going on in their body and their mind, and how does it affect them? Well, it's necessary that we do that. And it's also necessary that we understand that they are also humans, that they also have emotions. See, the reason a person with autism might not stand up for themselves is because they aren't able to. They aren't able to communicate that their feelings are being hurt, so instead they just bottle it up and keep it to themselves. But in order to further ourselves as society, we must learn to respect them and unlearn our saying of ableist words and our doing of ableist actions. Next slide. So how can we integrate them into society? Well, first and foremost, be compassionate. Do your best to help an individual with autism succeed. Because no matter how small a feat may seem to you, it's going to be a really, really big deal, maybe a life-changing moment for that individual. Also, go and make friends with somebody with autism. Because here's the thing, they might want to be friends with you, but they just can't be able to communicate it. So if you go and initiate a conversation, then they might be willing to respond. And if they don't respond at first, keep trying again and again. Don't get discouraged, because if you go and you make friends with them, I guarantee that you will not regret it. Lastly, and I think most importantly, support organizations that strive to help these individuals. You can do so by donating money, volunteering, or just simply publicizing the organization. See, all of these things are extremely important, because caring for an individual with autism is extremely time-consuming. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of money. And they need lifelong support, not only from their friends and family, but also from the rest of society. Now, we must also think about their future in quote-unquote our society. In previous generations, say for example those in the early to mid-20th century, there were not nearly as many people who had or were diagnosed with autism, and those that were institutionalized and segregated from the rest of society. But see, today we have achieved a certain level of autism awareness. We know what autism is, and we know how it affects someone. But the next step is autism acceptance, not just awareness. So let's think 20 or 30 years in the future. The children with autism will become adults with autism. And so if we want to show them that we truly do accept them, we must provide them the ability and the opportunity to prove that they are self-sufficient and able to make society a better place. But it is our responsibility to make society a better place for them. Next slide. Temple Grandin, an American professor of animal science, once said, "Nature is cruel, but we do not have to be." Thank you.